tried to see if I could put a filter on, but I can't find it. So you get what you get. My name is Edie. Some people know by Edie Ann. My daughter Marissa and I are Superstar Directors with Sensi. I've been with Sensi since 2010. 14 years. That seems like a century ago. How about a decade? Okay, so tonight I want to talk about something that kind of happens at the beginning of the year. It also is going to kind of piggyback against some of the other speakers that have already been on since the new year. I know we haven't had a lot of Mondays, but I know Jody talked about it. There's been a couple people that have talked about resetting and getting your mind in the right space to get 2025 going and to get it in the right direction, in the right momentum. And what comes with that is change. And I'm going to say something. There are lots of people that they have change paralysis. And I don't know if you know what that means, but basically it means that when change happens, whether it's you that brings it on or somebody else brings it on, we get in this stage of panic that kind of puts us in a state of paralysis. And it's kind of like someone who has ADHD, and when they become overwhelmed, they just shut down. And so I want to talk about that a little bit tonight, because I think that as the new year comes in and as we are changing things up from what we did in 2024, or maybe we're going to be presented with changes, whether it's from Sensi or from our customers or our family environment, and things that we don't have a lot of control over, those changes can actually be looked at as, you know, some people will say challenges versus changes, right? Sometimes we have to look at it in a different way. Is it happening to me, or is it happening for me? Right? And so when you just change the one word, sometimes it can really shift how we're looking at things. Okay? And so I want to get real for a second, because change can be hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to say that it's not uncomfortable, that it can be kind of uncertain, right? We feel a little bit of on edge when change happens, and it can sometimes be downright terrifying. And if we allow change to paralyze us, then we cannot move forward. And so what I'm going to share with you guys tonight are some ways to get past that paralysis, past that fear, and understand that change is necessary for growth. If we don't change, we don't grow. If as a child or a toddler, we didn't change the way we tied our shoes, we never would have tied shoes. If we didn't change the way that we fed ourselves from hands to spoons, it would have been very difficult to go out in public as an adult eating with your hands, right? So we have evolved through change our entire lives. But what happens, unfortunately, is when we get to adulthood, change isn't welcomed as much, right? And so we start to get fearful of change, because unfortunately we have seen things now, and we kind of get into a headspace of, oh, but I know what can happen. It hasn't happened, but I know what can happen. And so we kind of get ourselves caught in this phase of, I'm just not going to change because I know what can happen. And so we fear what could happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean it will happen. Does that make sense? Okay. I want to kind of put a precursor now that there's some people on. First of all, I'm here in my living room. If you are not following me or you have no clue who I am, like I said, I'm a superstar director and I've been with Sensi for over 14 years. I just recently had spinal surgery. And so that's why I'm sitting here on my couch and I'm not in my office and I'm not doing things from the counter like I might do or from different places that you might have seen me doing videos from. And I had to change how I am running my business right now because I am healing and I can only sit a certain way and I can only sit for a certain amount of time. And so I've had to change how I do things. We are going to be presented with those types of challenges or obstacles throughout our entire time of our business, whether it's in our personal lives or in our business lives. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. Okay. And so when it comes to business, staying stagnant and not changing, it's not an option. We can't do that, right? Because if we do that, you don't grow, you don't get new customers, you don't have the ability to bring more team members in. The markets are going to evolve. Our industry is evolving. We've all felt that in the last year or so, right? Things are changing. We don't have control over them, right? When the pandemic hit, we didn't have a lot of control over how we were going to run our business. And if you came into this business at that time, you're now seeing a shift because people are starting to go back to work, right? So the trends are going to shift. Customers' needs are going to change. And if we feel stuck in the this is how it's always been, right, mindset, we risk missing out on opportunities to grow and to serve better, to stand out in our industry. So change is going to be the bridge between standing still and where we are now to where we want to go. And so whether those changes come from us or, like I said, home office, no matter where those changes come from, if we don't learn to adapt and change our mindset, we will get left behind. I want you to hear that again. If you cannot adapt and shift, you will be left behind. Okay? Here is the secret. Change starts with mindset. Y'all know I'm all about the mindset. And it's not all about positivity. It's how we roll with the changes. It's how we roll with the challenges. It's how we roll through the obstacles. And I talk about this. I have a book that I've started called The Pothole. And I talk about this often, that you have options. When you get to a pothole in the middle of the road, you have an option. You can either sit there idle, and let's assume you're in a car. You can sit there idling, trying to determine how you're going to get to the other side of the pothole. Okay? You can try to go around the pothole if there's room. You can turn around and go back. Or you can try to run through the pothole. The object here is that you are not sitting idle, because if you sit idle, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. If you sit idle at that pothole and do nothing, then nothing will happen. But in every other choice or mindset that you took, if you decided that you just were going to put the pedal to the metal and just try to go right through that pothole, listen, you might come through on the other side unscathed. You might have some damage to your car. You might not, right? But at least you made the effort to go forward. You might have tried to go around. Maybe you made the observation that there was enough space for you to go on the outside of that pothole and kind of maneuver around and go forward, right? even if you decide to turn around, you might not decide to go back to the beginning, or maybe you do. But at that point, now you can make a different decision to maybe take a different route. Maybe get in a different vehicle that you know you can get around the pothole. Maybe you get out of the car and you walk around. But every choice gave you a different option. It gave you an opportunity to get around the obstacle, around the change. And the change in the road was the pothole, right? So the only option that is not a good option is to stay stagnant, is to stay idle and to do nothing. You gain nothing from that, okay? So I think, hi Dawn, I think that if you can understand that change from you starts with your mindset to say, well, I can't just sit here and do nothing. I can't just take this new information and do nothing with it. I can insert it into my business and say, you know, I'm gonna take an analogy. I don't remember what year it was, but when they decided that they were going to charge shipping, there were many people that sat there and said, I'm not doing this. My customers are never going to buy from me if I have to charge them shipping. And some quit. That was the ultimate idol, right? They were like, not doing it. But there were many of us that struggled with it a little bit. And we're like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to sit at this pothole and have to charge shipping to my customers. They're going to be so upset and they're going to be so angry with me and they're not going to buy from me anymore. There might have been some of those moments. But if we got to the point where we were mad that the pothole was there, but then we said, okay, listen, how can I make this so that it's not an issue in my business, it's not an issue with my customers, and ultimately, if it's not an issue for me, the majority of my customers won't find it an issue either. Mindset. So when new things come into our business, maybe we discontinue a product or we open up a new country, right? And we see that as overwhelming. Who knows what the change could potentially be, if there are any? But it's up to us to figure out how we're going to incorporate that change as part of our business. It may even be, you know what, that's not a big deal, who cares? And move on, right? It may be that they change the amount that a party, when they changed it to, what was it, 350, that we got free shipping on a party if we put it all in the, whatever. They changed the shipping, right? And so they changed some stuff. Or we go from having an active consultant be 200 PRV in a month, every 4 months, to every year, every 12 months, right? Whatever the change is, it's inevitable. Guys, there's going to be changes. And when we have a change, there's going to be more. And when we have that change, there's going to be more. It has to happen. Why? Because our business in a stagnant phase will never succeed. Never. Because a stagnant water, what does it do? It gets putrid, right? It's gross. We don't want that in our business, right? We don't even want that in our lives. That's why I change my living room around all the time, because I don't want to be stagnant. I need change. I need change to thrive. And so that's the difference between looking at change as being a, that it's change. This is happening to me. I can't believe this is happening to me. No, I am excited that it's happening for me. Right? Here's the thing. The mindset shift, like I said, comes from saying things like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. No, I am just excited that it's happening for me. Like, if I make the change, obviously we deal with it, right? We cope with it because we know that it's something that we need. But when somebody else makes the change for us, sometimes we feel a little, like a kid who doesn't get their way. Imagine switching from in person. Okay, we're gonna use the scenario of the pandemic. So imagine switching from in-person parties, right, to online networking. Of course, it's unfamiliar at first, right? But it will expand your reach. It connects you to more people, and it introduces you to tools that you never knew you needed. So here's the thing. When we had the pandemic, here's the thing. I come from a town of 100. We just realized we had another. It used to be 192. It's 157 now. And so when I started this business, everybody was doing home parties. Back in 2010, that's all it was. And I remember being told that I wasn't going to succeed in this business if I didn't do home parties. And I fought that. I said, you know what? I'm not going to believe that. I'm not going to allow that to be my reality. I'm going to change things up a bit. And so I started Facebook parties, right? And if you were around back then, that was my gig. That's what I taught everybody how to do. And so that scenario, switching from in-person and adding networking, was something completely new to people. And did they have a hard time with it? Yeah, they did. But guess what? When the pandemic hit and nobody had a choice, right? Everybody came into online partying, right? So think about those things. When changes come to you and you feel overwhelmed because it's new, maybe it's something you have to learn, right? That sometimes can be hard. It's going to build a part of you and grow a part of you that you eventually can be super proud of. Think about that, right? So here's a surprising truth. When you lean into change, you start to trust yourself more. I want you to hear that again. When you lean in, sorry about my dog, she's hacking a hairball. When you lean into change, you actually start to trust yourself more because you're getting through those. So I say this a lot, actually. If you know me, I say this often. To this day, I want you to hear this. You have survived 100% of your worst days, of your most feared changes, and the ability to get through obstacles. Do you need to hear that again? To this day, you have survived 100% of those days, of the changes, of your worst days. Okay? And so learning a new skill, overcoming a challenge, taking a calculated risk, it's going to build your confidence. Every time you get through one of those days, you build on your confidence. You make yourself a stronger human being. You've got more knowledge. You have more self-esteem, right? Why wouldn't you want change? Why wouldn't you want the ability to get through those things? And even better, look at the network of support that you have to get through those things. What an amazing opportunity, right? So that's why I say it's not what's happening to me, it's what's happening for me, right? Look at what it's doing for me by getting through these changes. And so when I'm talking about changes, it could be some of the things that you're going to change in your business because it isn't quite up to where you want it to be right now, right? When we look at the reset that we do for 2025, we're looking at the things in 2024 that didn't quite work for us. So we're going to have to do some changing, right? For 2025 to be even better, right? To be even better. And you know what? The more you get through change, the less of a threat it becomes when things happen, when things change, when obstacles arise, or when challenges come up, right? The more you get through them, the less of a threat they are, the less of the overwhelmingness feeling that you get when you are faced with those changes, right? Confidence isn't built inside of your comfort zone. You've heard that numerous times, right? It's built in the moments that you say, I'm scared, but I'm going to try anyway. I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm scared, but I'm going to sit here and think about how I can get through that pothole or around that pothole or turn around and try a different route. Right? Sometimes that's what resets are, is turning around, going back to the basics and trying something different. Okay? I want you to think about one area in your life or your business where you've been resisting change. And then I want you to ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? And more importantly, what's the best thing that could happen? And I think you might be surprised that the worst thing that could happen is really not that bad. And all it's doing is giving you another opportunity to get around that pothole. Okay? So I want you to think about a place in your life or your business that you are resisting change. What is that? Write it down. And then give yourself some leverage. Give yourself some grace and say, you know what? How could I get through this? What are some things I could do? I bet you're going to find that they're not that hard. Okay? And so I want to make sure that we're committing to change and what we're allowing ourselves to again, give yourself some grace to that change. I want you to not feel so challenged by it. Get to that pothole, take a second and be like, yep, yeah, pothole, I see you. I got to get around you, I got to get through, or I got to go another way. Don't dwell on what could happen, because dwelling on what could happen will paralyze you and it will keep you in a spot of fear and anxiety, and we don't want you there. That's not where peace is found, and so we don't want you there. We want you to sit, acknowledge the pothole, say, I see you there, and we're going to turn around and go back, or we're going to go around, or we're going to go get a different vehicle altogether, right? So that we can get through that. Change isn't just something that we go through. I want you to understand that. It's something that we grow through, right? There's a time for us to reflect. There's a time for us to give ourselves grace. There's a time for us to look at it and say, you know what? It's not something that's happening to me. This is happening for me. And that's super important to remember. Okay. So every time you take a leap of faith, you're actually planting seeds for a brighter, bolder future. You're going to grow in it. You're going to learn from it. And your confidence is evolving. It's getting better and stronger and even more. You're going to get to a point where you're going to stop dreading change, and that's a beautiful place to be, right? You don't find anxiety and fear there, you're going to actually start celebrating it. When something comes up, when somebody changes something, when the business changes, when your customers change something, it's going to be celebrated as, we're growing. Something's changing, right? I feel the air shifting. I'm going to have to adjust my sails, and that's okay. Still can be a fun ride in that sailboat when you adjust your sails. You might get on a good wind and be like, whoo, let's go, right? Because the truth is, without change, there's no growth. Period. Without change, there's no growth. And that's what we're doing in this life, is growing and learning and adapting and adjusting our sails. right? So I really think that, mindset, actually, you know what? When the air of change comes into our realm, in our industry, okay, we're feeling a little bit of that right now anyway. When you embrace change in your own business or life, you inspire others to do the same. And whether it's your team, your customers, your family, people notice your courage. And courage is contagious. So just remember that. All right, everyone. I hope you have an amazing night. Go change something. Go make some changes. All right. I love you all. Have a great night.